नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय।
ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय।
ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय।
ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय।
ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय।
Reading from the Madana-gopāla, first canto, chapter 9, verses 37 and 38. Verse 37.
You should do one line at a time. You should lead one line at a time.
Thank you. I should start by saying I'm a very small child in Krishna consciousness. And I'm sitting at the adults' table here, feeling a little shy. So I'll start again. Okay. Svanigamam apayamat pratigyam.
Svanigamam apahayamat pratigyam. Tamadhikartum avapluto radhestha. Dhritarata charano vyayat chaladgu. Haririvahantum itham gatotariya. Svanigamam apahaya mat pratigyam. Tamadhikartum avapluto rathastha. Dhritarata charano bhayat chaladgu. Haririvahantum ibham gatotariya. Svanigamam apahaya mat pratigyam. Tamadhikartum avapluto rathastha. Dhritarata charano vyayat chaladgu. Haririvahantum ibham gatotariya. Haririvahantum ibham gatotariya. Tamadhikartum avapluto rathastha. Dhritarata charano vyaya chaladgu.
Harivahantumibam gatottariya.
Harivahantumibam gatottariya. Svanigama bahaya matpratityam.
Svanigama bahaya matpratityam.
Ritamadikartum avahuto ratasta. Tritarata charanopyaya kalatku.
Dhritarata charano vyaya chaladgu.
Harivahantumibam gatottariya.
Harivahantumibam gatottariya. Swanigamam apahaya matpratigyam.
Dhritarata charano abhaya chandru. Haririvahantumibam gatottariya.
Harivahantumibam gatottariya. Swanigamam apahaya matpratigyam. Tamadhikartum avakuto. Dhritarata charano vyaya chaladgu. Harivahantumibam gatottariya. Swanigamam apahaya matpratigyam. Harivahantumibam gatottariya. Harivahantumibam gatottariya.
Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki. Fulfilling my desire and sacrificing his own promise, he got down from the chariot, took up its wheel, and ran towards me hurriedly, just like a lion goes to kill an elephant. He even dropped his outer garment on the way. Purport. The Battle of Kurukshetra was fought on military principles, but at the same time in a sporting spirit, like a friend fights with another friend. Duryodhana criticized Bhismadeva, alleging that he was reluctant to kill Arjuna because of paternal affection. A kshatriya cannot tolerate insults on the principle of fighting. Bhismadeva therefore promised that the next day he would kill all 5 Pandavas with special weapons made for the purpose. Duryodhana was satisfied, and he kept the arrows with him to be delivered the next day during the fight. By tricks, Arjuna took the arrows from Duryodhana, and Bhismadeva could understand that this was the trick of Lord Krishna. So he took a vow that the next day Krishna would have to take up weapons himself, otherwise his friend Arjuna would die. So in the next day's fighting, Bhismadeva fought so violently that both Arjuna and Krishna were in trouble. Arjuna was almost defeated. The situation was so tense that he was about to be killed by Bhismadeva the very next moment. At that time, Lord Krishna wanted to please his devotee Bhishma by keeping his promise, which was more important than his own. Seemingly, he broke his own promise. He promised before the beginning of the Battle of Kurukshetra that he would remain without weapons and would not use his strength for either of the parties. But to protect Arjuna, he got down from the chariot, took up the wheel of the chariot, and hurriedly rushed at Bhismadeva in an angry mood, like a lion goes to kill an elephant. He dropped his covering cloth on the way, and out of great anger, he did not know that he dropped it. up his weapons and stood to be killed by Krishna, his beloved Lord. The fighting of the day was thus ended at that very moment, and Arjuna was saved. Of course, there was no possibility of Arjuna's death because the Lord himself was on the chariot, but because Bhismadeva wanted to see Lord Krishna take up some weapon to save his friend, the Lord created this situation, making Arjuna's death imminent. He stood before Bhismadeva to show him that his promise was fulfilled and that he had taken up the wheel. We'll also be reading text 38. So we can advance the
next text.
next text. Shita.
You can just read because we're not
Shita Shita Hato Shirna Damsa Damsha Shitaja Parikuta Atate Inome Prasabam Abhisar Sarat Vatantam Sabavatu Me Bhagavan Gatir Makunda. May he, Lord Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who awards salvation, be my ultimate destination. On the battlefield he charged me as if angry because of the wounds dealt by my sharp arrows. His shield was scattered and his body was smeared with blood due to the wounds. Purport. The dealings of Lord Krishna and Bhismadeva on the battlefield of Kurukshetra are interesting because the activities of Lord Krishna appear to be partial to Arjuna and an enmity with Bhismadeva. But factually, all of this was especially meant to bestow special favor to Bhismadeva, a great devotee of the Lord. The astounding feature of such dealings is that a devotee can please the Lord by playing the part of an enemy. The Lord, being absolute, can accept service from his pure devotee, even in the garb of an enemy. The Supreme Lord cannot have any enemy, nor can a so-called enemy harm him because he is ajita, or unconquerable. But still, he takes pleasure when his pure devotee beats him like an enemy or rebukes him from a superior position. Although no one can be superior to the Lord. These are some of the transcendental reciprocatory dealings of the devotee with the Lord, and those who have no information of pure devotional service cannot penetrate into the mystery of such dealings. Bhismadeva played the part of a valiant warrior, and he purposefully pierced the body of the Lord so that to the common eyes it appeared that the Lord was wounded, but factually all this was to bewilder the devotees, to bewilder the non-devotees. The all-spiritual body cannot be wounded, and a devotee cannot become the enemy of the Lord. Had it been so, then Bhismadeva would not have desired to have the very same Lord as the ultimate destination of his life. Had Bhismadeva been an enemy of the Lord, he could have annihilated him without even moving. There was no need to come before Bhismadeva with blood and wounds, but he did so because the warrior devotee wanted to see the transcendental beauty of the Lord, decorated with wounds created by a pure devotee. This is the way of exchanging transcendental rasas, or relations, between the Lord and the servitor. By such dealings, both the Lord and the devotee become glorified in their respective positions. The Lord was so angry that Arjuna checked him when he was moving towards Bhismadeva, but in spite of Arjuna's checking, he proceeded towards Bhismadeva as a lover goes to a lover, without caring for hindrances. Apparently, his determination was to kill Bhismadeva, but factually it was to please him as a great devotee of the Lord. The Lord is undoubtedly the deliverer of all conditioned souls. The impersonalists desire salvation from him, and he always awards them according to their aspiration. But here Bhismadeva aspires to see the Lord in his personal feature. All pure devotees aspire for this. Om Avanyatandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Militamyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born into the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master is opening my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I bow to him again. Before beginning, I seek the blessings from all of the senior devotees who are gathered amongst us. I also seek the blessings, of my spiritual master. particular, I dedicate this class, I offer it to my dear Guru Ma. I would like to thank you for everything that you are doing for us, that you are teaching us the finer arts of being a human being, and hopefully learning how to be a devotee of the Lord. Thank you. So before turning to the verse, I'll just introduce myself to say that I am a disciple of His Grace, Madana-gopāla. And we are here on a homecoming tour, really, for His Grace coming back to the place where he was born, the place where he grew up, Kenya. And am I having trouble here? Can you not hear me? Okay. So as I say, we are here on a homecoming tour for His Grace, coming back to Kenya. And I can't say enough about what a wonderful country this is, what a beautiful landscape, what fertile soil, what joyful people. And I want to say that it really helps us understand the mood of our Guru in this place, where he got his start with the senior devotees here, sitting on the rooftop, as the sun goes down, the birds are swirling, and it's just so relaxing on the temple rooftop with the tulsi plants. And it makes us understand our Guru's mood, which I understand in Swahili means that he is ametuli. So I also, just before I begin, really want to thank Govinda Prabhu, Sita Devi Dasi for hosting us and just putting together and coordinating an amazingly logistically challenging trip. So thank you so much to your gratitude. Really, everybody here has been so generous. Know that we cannot literally repay you in any way other than to know that we will pay it forward to other devotees. And I hope it will. So turning to the verses, we find ourselves in the bloody heart of the battlefield of Kurukshetra. And I would like to begin with a reflection on Bhismadeva's position as he's speaking these verses. And as we all know, his literal position is that he's lying on a bed of arrows. And I remember when I first read this verse, I saw an illustration of it. What is this bed of arrows? And I saw an illustration that had a very elderly gentleman who looked very clean, with like a clean white beard, and he was lying on a perfectly stacked row of rectangular arrows. He was just sort of lying casually on top of it. I don't know, I think there was a little bit of blood, but not too much. And it reminded me of something that my mentor told me, an early mentor in my career. I live in New York City, and in my career I focus on environmental protection and environmental conservation, trying to protect Mother Bhumi from the onslaughts. And my first job out of graduate school was with the New York City Department of Sanitation. And one of my early mentors there was a Vietnam veteran. He was actually, which I think many of you may know, was an unpopular conflict in America. Actually, at the time when Srila Prabhupada came to America, he was a combat veteran. He is a combat veteran, which means he has actually seen battle. And he described to me that nobody in battle dies like they do in the movies. We see in the movies someone just gets shot and then boom, they're dead. Nobody actually dies like that. And then he described to me how it really does happen, that you're with, in this particular war, a platoon, or your group of soldiers, you're traveling with fellow groups of soldiers. And unlike what Prabhupada says in the purport, that in previous times, there were rules of engagement. He says that it was almost like these were friends sporting with friends, but it was war, it was serious. But there was culture around it, there was understanding of, then at the end of the day, you would go home and then you would start again. By the time, fast forward in Kali Yuga, we get to Vietnam, there are no rules of engagement. There is actually no other uniformed army. You're just marching through a jungle, and sudden the enemy comes upon you, and it's described as entering into a field of fire. And you can imagine that it's hornets, a swarm of hornets going by your ears, and it's coming at you, but it's actually bullets, and any one of them has your name on it, and any one of them can kill you, and it's literally a field of bullets coming at you. And you see your friend go down over here, your friend go down over here, your friend go down over here, and then they call it the fog of war. You just have absolutely no idea what is happening, and you just take your machine gun and close your eyes and just fire at anything that you can see, not your own people, and then ultimately you just surrender, and you are face down in the mud, and you realize that you haven't been hit, but you see other people have been hit, and ultimately you don't have any communication. You don't know what's going on. Your commander, your communications, your radio person is down, the commander may be killed. You just have to lie there and wait. You just have to lie there and wait. And that can be until the next morning, that the medevac comes in, the helicopters come in to take people away. And so you're just lying there all night, and you are hearing the sounds of people dying, and people do not die slowly. Bullet wounds go into bodies, and people bleed out. That's what it's called. They bleed out. So, if you've got a bullet through your arm or a bullet through that you bleed out slowly, actually. It's very merciful if you get hit in the heart or the brain, but it's uncommon. And then he said, and we hear this from others who've experienced combat, that every single person to a man, the toughest, hardiest, harshest, gnarliest, as we say, military men, in those final hours, all call out for their mother. And so you're lying there in the mud, hearing them calling out for their mother. So I think of Bhismadeva through this lens. I don't think he's lying on a very neat bed of arrows. I'm thinking, actually, think about the arrows that were used at that time. They were long sticks with sharp spears on them. So you can imagine, like, one has gone through his arm here, might have even severed his shoulder, but it's stuck. And it's stuck in the ground, and it's a long stick, you can't pull it out, and then you've got another one coming through your leg, and it's coming into the ground over here. So you're there might be a third, but you're pinned. That's the point, you're pinned. You can't lie down. You're just pinned there. Unable to lie down, unable to rest in that agony. And so that is your bed of arrows as you bleed out. And Bhismadeva notably did not call out for his mother. He called out for Lord Krishna, because he is a pure devotee of the Lord. He is one of the Mahajans. And so what he has to say, we should pay particular attention to, because these words are written in blood. And we should also pay attention to anything that Srila Prabhupada puts in italics. I always pay particular attention to anything Srila Prabhupada puts in italics. And in verse number 38, he says in italics, "The astounding feature of such dealings is that a devotee can please the Lord by playing the part of an enemy." He goes on to say the Lord, being absolute, can accept service from his pure devotee even in the garb of an enemy. So I would like to just take a moment and reflect on the word absolute. It's a word that we use a lot in Krishna consciousness, in ISKCON, absolute, the absolute truth. But what does absolute mean? And like my dear Gurudev, following humbly in his footsteps, I'm a bit of an etymology geek. And so I note that the root of the word absolute comes from the same word as absolve. Absolute and absolve. And what does absolve mean? You absolve someone of wrongdoing, right? You absolve them from their sins. You free them. They are unrestricted. And so the Lord is unrestricted. He is absolute. He is free. The Lord is free. do whatever he wants. And we can think in our mundane conception of that this is maybe an easier part of the Lord to approach because we know what an autocrat looks like, right? We know somebody who's above the law. And they're free to do what they want. They're unrestricted. And we can maybe magnify that many, many, many times and think, oh, that's Krishna. We can at least approach that way, that aspect of the absolute. The other aspects of the absolute are a little bit more difficult to get one's mind around. And in particular, absolute means that it's not related to anything else. It's not relative to anything else. And you may remember this from math classes, right? Absolute numbers. But I was never good at math. And so I'm going to use an example of the fruit seller outside of the temple here, who gave us 2 green apples, and we didn't have any money because we hadn't done our exchange, and he gave them to us for free, which was so unbelievably touching, which has been just in a capsule everything about this visit, of the incomprehensible generosity of the people that we've experienced here. And he told us how to write them, and it was truly the most unbelievable fruit I've ever had in my life. But back to the absolute. So imagine that you have a pile of green apples, okay? And you can take 2 apples from that pile, and you have 2 apples in your hand, right? And so that's -2 apples. Or you can go to the fruit seller and ask for 2 more apples and take them in your hand and add them to the pile, right? That's +2 apples. What's in your hand? Anyone? How many apples are in your hand? 2, right? That's the absolute. You can take the whole rest of the pile and put it behind your back. It's still 2, right? It's +2 or -2 in relationship to the pile. But in your hand, it's always 2. It's not related to anything else. So buckle your seatbelts here. This is where it gets complex. So now we're not talking about a pile of green apples. We're talking about all of existence. All the universes, everything that is. Everything that is. Okay? Now, if you were to take that and put it behind your back, so not relative to anything, and you were to look in your hands, what is Krishna. He's not related to anything. There is no comparison. That's when they say he's one without a second. It's hard to get your mind around this. But I encourage us all to try to do it, and I'm very inspired by Madhuri, who says that we should, approach the philosophy with relish, and taste. And it's a real, even though it's hard to go to the gym, it feels so good after you go. And so we should work out our minds in the same way, and look at these verses, not as mental gymnastics, but as ways to come closer to the Lord and understand who is he, what is he like. He's absolute. He's not related to anything that is, but he's what's left over when you take everything else away. The last aspect of the absolute that I'd like to mention is that what is absolute is independent. It's independent of anything else. It's not dependent or related to anything else. And if you think of us in the material world, we are exceedingly dependent on everybody and everything, right? I don't know about you, but I don't know how to weave my own cloth. We were at the farm yesterday, associated with the temple. Sorry, I'm forgetting the name of the farm. The Krishna Balaram farm, yeah. I don't know how to milk a cow. I don't even know how to put on my own sari. So we are completely dependent on each other, and not just as a society, but we're completely dependent on the environment. In my line of work, we talk about ecosystem services, right? The soil filters the water. When we were driving from Masai Mara to Eldoret, you could see the water just dripping down through the bedrock where you could see it. And this this water is being cleaned by the rocks and is then, giving life to the lushness that feeds these cows that are like the glossiest, most lustrous cows I've ever seen in my life, that makes the most phenomenal yogurt that I've ever tasted in my life. And so the cycle goes on. And when we were in the Masai Mara, my Gurudev gave a really excellent analogy of this kind of cycle of interdependence, that sort of the deer is eaten by the lion, the bones become the barbecue for the hyena, and then everything sort of breaks down to feed the grass, which feeds the deer again. So this cycle of independence and dependence is the definition of how we exist in the material world. But the Lord is independent of all of this. He depends on nobody. So he's free, he's unrestricted, he's not related to anything, he's not relative to anything, and he's independent. And these are some of the features of what it means when we say absolute. I also really appreciated when my guru was sitting in this seat, much more capably than I am, that he gave another sort of flavor about the relative nature of us versus the absolute. We talked about the Bhagavad Gita, verse 4:11, when he was talking about everyone follows my path in all respects. And I really appreciated, Gurudev, the way you were saying that path, everyone is on that path, but not everybody's going in the right direction. Right? You could be going towards Krishna, or you could be going away from Krishna. I had always thought of that path that like slowly everybody's making progress towards Krishna. No, some people are heading in the wrong direction. And that's just one of the ways that our Guru is opening our eyes on this trip. And I know that he doesn't appreciate this appreciation. But I just want to say that we have been following our Gurudev around, just trying to keep up with him. His schedule of classes has been phenomenal, and literally we cannot keep up with the pearls of wisdom that keep dropping out, like just this one. We have these deities are so special. We have in our country what's called a gumball machine. I don't know if you've ever seen them, but they're these big glass globes, kind of, and they're filled with candy or gumballs, and you put in a coin, twist it, and then you get a little candy in your hand. Our Gurudev on this trip has been a gumball machine filled with pearls, and all that you need to put in it is your kind attention and your valuable time. And what you get out, it just doesn't stop coming, and the pearls are just like falling on the floor, and us devotees, our disciples are sort of running behind, trying to scoop them all up and put them in all in order. And it is our humble goal to get them all in place so that you can see them online and benefit from them. So it's really been a lot of fun that way too as a trip. So going back to the verse, the next thing that I'd like to reflect on is he writes. Well, first of all, Prabhupada writes that the Lord is Ajita. Am I pronouncing that right? Ajita. Unconquerable. So now that we have some sense of the nature of the absolute, it makes a little bit more sense why he's unconquerable. But this is so sweet. He says, but still, he takes pleasure when his pure devotee beats him like an enemy or rebukes him from a superior position, although no one can be superior to the Lord. My Gurudev has a Zoom call every week with his disciples and aspiring disciples, and we're actually reading these very verses right now, which first of all goes to show just the mercy of Krishna, but also that our Guru, I feel like, is just so aligned with Kenya and the vibrations that you're all sending out from here. But it's merciful for me because I have, everything I'm saying really, I'm parroting from what my Gurudev has said. But he gave a wonderful example of thinking about this pleasure that Krishna takes from being beaten by somebody. He said, imagine a judge, who is doing his business all day, sitting on the bench, hearing all these cases, and he's deciding people's fates, right? He's sending them to jail, he's setting them free, he's absolving them. But then he goes home, and his little son, his little toddler son, wants to play sort of cops and robbers, right? The sort of police and the bandits. And he says, "Daddy, now you've been bad, and I'm going to put handcuffs on you, Daddy. And I'm going to put you in jail. Come over here, Daddy. You go stand over here, and this is the jail, and you go stand over here because you've been very bad, and now you're in handcuffs." And it delights the father immensely to play along with this game of going to jail. And so we can think of Krishna that way, as a father who's so charmed by any of our attempts to have a relationship with him. And that's really the absolute, is the relationship with him. It doesn't matter whether it's a +2 relationship or a -2 relationship. The Lord can have no enemies because he's absolute. So we learn here that one of the rewards of being a pure devotee, we're talking about pure devotees, certainly not me, certainly not many of us here, I would imagine. These are people who dedicate their mind, body, words, every moment to Lord Krishna. They do exist amongst us. But one of the benefits of this, of being such a devotee, is that Krishna reciprocates with them in this play. And he takes on a role based on the role that you want him to have, which is really mind-boggling in a way. You know, that he takes on a role based on what we want to sort of interact with him. And Bhismadeva, obviously being a great warrior and a tough dude, he wants to interact with the Lord as an enemy opponent, and he wants to see the Lord coming at him with blood and wounds. This is his mood. This is the mood. I have to get a sense of where your voice comes. This is the mood of that Bhismadeva wants. This is the rasa. This is the taste that he wants. And even if we are not pure devotees of the Lord yet, it's still important for us to think about what is the relationship that we want with the Lord. How can we please the Lord? How can we think about those things? And not that we get ahead of ourselves to think that we are having that relationship with the Lord or that he's reciprocating with us, but that it's important that we bring some spice or some juice into our thoughts of the Lord to help us think about him more, so that our sadhana is not dry and our devotion isn't dry and we're not just offering dandavats across the floor and thinking about something else maybe. That we can think about what are these ways that we can please the Lord. Some of us would like to prepare maybe a very beautiful meal for the Lord with very elaborate dishes and very expensive ingredients, and seat him and please him in this regard with all of these dishes. Some of us might like to wash his lotus feet. And so I think that, we can think of these things so that we can think of Krishna more, to find other ways to think of Krishna more throughout our day. And it's not for our own titillation or enjoyment that we're thinking about these things, but it's so that we can, again, it brings some enthusiasm to our Krishna consciousness, some juice, if you will. And so, really, that when we perform our sadhana, that our heart is in it. And that when we think of these things, whatever we choose to think about, they are the things that I say that are not necessarily for our own enjoyment, but we should feel that our heart is beating a little bit harder when we think of these things in relationship to the Lord, to help us focus. The next thing that I wanted to focus on was that in the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, the Lord was so angry that Arjuna checked him when he was moving towards Bhismadeva. But in spite of Arjuna's checking, he proceeded towards Bhismadeva as a lover goes to a lover without caring for hindrances. know this feeling that nothing will stop you, nothing will get in your way to getting to your beloved. And you are willing to risk your reputation, you're willing to risk your career, you're willing to risk everything to get to this person. And, you know, when having been through that, when I stop and think about it now, I think of who was the Acharya that you said was Yamunacharya, who said when he thought back on his illicit relationships with women, it made his lip curl in disgust. I honestly feel that way now. I look back on those things that I did, my lip curls in disgust. And I think because it seems so farcical. Like what a waste to put that much on the line for what? To like rub your skin against somebody else's skin. Like that seems like such a low goal for such high stakes. And when we were flying back from Eldoret, outside of the airport, there was a billboard in Nairobi, and it was for some canned beverage, and it said, "Thirsty for something more?" And everything inside me said, yes, yes, I am thirsty for something more. That what Srila Prabhupada has given us is so valuable because we can trade in, you know, we can still put everything on the line, and we know that we can because we have. We've put everything on the line, I know I have, for nonsense, for skin. Like, what is that? That doesn't even last. You know, so what Srila Prabhupada has given us in exchange for that is we can put everything on the line. We can put our career on the line. We can put our material possessions on the line. We can put our comfort on the line for love of Krishna and for an eternal relationship with the Lord, which is more than anything that you could imagine. And I don't remember where Prabhupada said this, but it was in one purport, and it was so lovely, and his writing style changes in so many different places. It was almost as if he was laughing to himself as an aside as he was writing. He said, you know, it's so wonderful that someone could live a life of debauchery and sin and nonsense, and then they can just read the Srimad Bhagavatam, and it clears everything up. And then they can proceed on, you know, and they can proceed towards love of God. And that to me, because it speaks to my own life, is the unbelievable mercy of Srila Prabhupada, first and foremost, but the Srimad Bhagavatam too. That it's a scientific fact. You read this book, you listen to it every day attentively, and your life will change. I am living proof of that. I think there was something else I wanted to say, but I don't remember it. So, I'm just going to conclude there and ask if anybody has any questions or comments. Yes.
Hare Krishna, Madhuri, thank you very much for your wonderful class. I would like to first begin by appreciating your attitude for your spiritual master. I think it's very remarkable, like how you glorify your spiritual master, and also your deep realization of the Krishna consciousness. I think if everybody sees in their lifetime, what they have done for what, as how you put it, really we would like sacrifice so much for just, as Srila Prabhupada calls it, the mirage in the desert. But my question Many devotees will think today, oh, if I get a green card, I'm going to go to America. But you are here glorifying the yogurt and the soil and things like that. So what are some of the things that you see coming from New York that you feel can inspire your Krishna consciousness? If you listen to
Maybe it could inspire people's Krishna consciousness here or mine?
your per se, because you're coming from New York.
Oh, yes, yeah. I think what inspires my Krishna consciousness here is the happiness and the joy. I don't know how to describe it. It's just in the air. And maybe if you live here, it's hard to see because you just are in it. It's like you're it's like a fish in the fishbowl, right? I can't see the water that it's in. But there is palpable, tangible joy in the air here and happiness. And when we were at Krishna Balaram Farm, for example, or when we were in Nakuru and Eldoret, the communities that you have here are so joyful. Like I've been to ISKCON communities in America, and it's different. Of course, it's good, but you have a harmony. I don't, if you will, there's a harmony amongst people and the environment. And it's not to say that there's not pollution and litter and those things. That's not what I'm talking about. It's at a deeper spiritual level that people are connected to each other and connected to the earth here in ways that New York specializes in dissecting that connection. When you're in New York, you are intentionally disconnected from anybody. You can be on the subway with 1 million people and know nobody. And you subway. You can, you have your little groups of friends, but there's not that sense of harmony and community in the same way. Where it just, it's intentional. You can form communities and you can work at it and you can do projects to facilitate community building, if you will. But here it just exists. It's in the air. I don't know how to describe it. And so for me, it's been remarkable how quickly I settle into my japa. Just so much more quickly here, I settle into my japa. When we were at the farm yesterday, the cows were moving very loudly, but they don't disturb your japa, But nothing disturbs your japa here. You just sort of melt into it. I will say, I've worked in government in New York City, and there's a lot of people who come from other countries to work for the government in New York City. It looks a little bit like the United Nations working for the government. And everybody who comes to New York from other countries, they take month-long vacations to go back home to be with their families. And every time they come back, they're like, I don't want to be here. And they say, I don't want to be here. And and so I have to ask them, I'm like, then why are you here? And they're like, the money. I'm here for the money. So if you're interested in money, come to New York. Do come to New York, though, to visit. It's a wonderful place to visit. But if you want Krishna consciousness, and you want community, and you want harmony, and you want your spiritual practices to not be an intentional project that you're working on, but just part of your natural living, then I would say stay in Kenya. My dear Guru Mama.
Thank you so much, dear Venu Madhuri. The class was wonderful. I wanted to ask you, since you are a married woman and you have wonderful family both sides, on your in-laws side as well as your parents' side, and I wanted to know, now that you have sincerely taken up the process of Krishna consciousness, how has both sides of family accepted, adopted, or reacted towards this process, and how has your journey been so far? If you can just explain in a few words. Thank you.
would say, my husband is he's not a devotee, but he's very supportive, and he says he grew up as a Catholic. He doesn't practice now, but he's, looked at a lot of religions from sort of a philosophical point of view, and he says, hands down, this path makes the most sense. My parents, are not surprised. I've always been a seeker and a wanderer. Shocking. But my father did write to me recently. He said, sometime when you're back, he said, I'd love for you to explain to me why you've chosen a path so far from your home, this foreign culture. And this actually was the other point that I wanted to say that I remember now. When we were in Eldoret, and Dave was giving a lecture at the university there, one of the students, wow, were they smart students. Holy, that's really great questions we got. But one of them, on the kind of the lighter side, was, why do you dress like that? And I think especially as a white Westerner, I can say definitely doing Harinam in Nairobi, I got some looks. But that, my parents had the same question, kind of like, why are you dressing like an Indian person? And why are you taking on Indian religion when you have a religion here? My parents actually are atheist and agnostic, but they kind of gave us a Christian education just so we would sort of understand it. And I think, the answer that I discussed in the car with you and Gurudev that I was thinking about, but, I wasn't answering that question the young woman asked, but if I had been asked that question, I would say to the students, look at the clothes that you're wearing. You're wearing New York Yankee baseball hat and blue jeans, right, and hoodies. You're not wearing your Kenyan clothes. And why is that? Right, because we take on the mores of the cultures we admire. So I am wearing these clothes, I am speaking these words, I am pursuing this path because I have the greatest admiration for the Vedic culture. I think it is supreme. I grew up reading a lot of Western philosophy. I liked philosophy, and when I look at it now, it's a little bit like, my lip doesn't curl, but it's a little bit like thinking about German food versus Indian food. The complexity, the richness, the complete nutrition, the abundance of oil, maybe. No, but it's everything you need in a food. You look at German food, and it's very bland. It's very bland. And I think, relating that to the Srimad Bhagavatam and this verse in particular, the details that we get about the Lord and how he likes to enter into games with his pure devotees. That's the reward of being a pure devotee, is that you get to play with the Lord. And there are German philosophers that talk about Spiegel and the game, and the universe is a game, that the Lord is playing a game, but it leaves you cold and dry like a German meal because it's not satisfying in the same way. It's also inhumane and disgusting in that regard, from a Himsa perspective. But, here you actually have the flavor. It's not just a game in the universe, and Spiegel is a game. It's like, no, here's how the game is played. Here are the players. Here's how they're dressed. Here's what they're saying. And so you can really, like I was saying in Kenya, kind of sink in. You can really sink in and improve your Krishna consciousness. So my family has been exceedingly supportive, a little bit curious, but not surprised. And does anyone else have any questions? Do any of the other devotees who live in Kenya have any questions? Okay. In that we can
I don't know, Krishna, I just see classes are wonderful and nice. It's nice to understand how your family appreciate you. Some of us, our parents are pastors and bishops, and being here is kind of hard. We have conflict with them. So thank you for the class.
Thank you so much.
Please, can you say something?
I just want to appreciate for the wonderful class that it has given.
Thank you, everyone.